Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Real Science with Chris Neal. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I get asked a lot about in my consultations. We're going to talk about hair thinning and hair loss and how to ultimately lose our hat collection. So let's get into it. If you like this kind of content, please hit a like and subscribe and make sure you check us out. Thanks a lot. Here we go. Okay, everybody. So, hair loss. Let's get into it. We're going to get into the real science as to how the hair thins, how you lose your hair, and how to get that back again. Because unfortunately, not all of us are cool enough to build our entire aura around a just not having hair. I mean, some people can, Jason Statham, or all the other guys that are out there, like they can certainly do that. But that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, as many of you know, I am a co-owner of a hormone replacement therapy clinic. So we get this question a lot, especially when it comes to testosterone replacement therapy. And you know how I am. I'm not satisfied with just saying stuff, without backing it up. Like that's what I call it. If you're just going to talk and not back anything up, then you're just saying stuff. So we're going to really dig into the nuts and bolts behind this. But I get this question a lot from people. Oh my goodness, if I get on TRT because I need it, does that mean that I'm automatically going to lose my hair? And let me be the first to say that no, that is certainly not what that means. There is a mechanism behind that, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So first off, we got to take a big step back and talk about what causes hair thinning and hair loss. Hair loss is essentially just an extreme amount of hair thinning. If you notice that you are losing, no one really counts, but true hair loss is considered the loss of over 50 hairs per day, and that's just in day-to-day showering, shampooing, conditioning, and combing through your hair and so forth. Essentially, you'll know, like if you, as you're going through your day and you look down at your hands after washing your hair and you see, more hair than usual, it's normal to see, 2, 3, 5, even 10, but 50 hairs a day or more, that's considered an issue. And the sooner you get a hold of it before you go completely, Mr. Clean, then the easier it is to bring back and put back into place. Now, we're going to talk about a lot of different methods, but we're not going to get into the surgical techniques. There is hair implantation and all kinds of things like that. That is a possibility, but I like exploring all of the natural and more less invasive things that you can do first before you have to go that route. And to be truthful, most people do not have to go that route. So we're gonna stick with the non-invasive forms to start with. But first, we have to understand where or what the cause of the hair thinning is to begin with. So there are a few different causes of hair thinning. It's not always hormone, or at least testosterone related. Okay, but let's talk about the testosterone related hair thinning first, because that is on the minds of a lot of people, especially in the hormone replacement therapy world. So the way that testosterone causes hair thinning is multimodal. There's a couple different factors that go into that. So testosterone, once it's inside your body, and this is just a natural, normal process, is converted into dihydrotestosterone, which is a more active form of regular testosterone. It's about 9 times more anabolic in character than regular testosterone. So it's an important piece to have. You want to have that active DHT in most cases. So now, but how does that cause a problem? Well, if you get too much DHT in your system for you, whatever that means, there's a threshold. So let's call it a glass ceiling. Okay, there's a threshold that's in your body of a certain amount of dihydrotestosterone that anything beyond that, you're going to break the glass ceiling. You're going to cause some side effects, some issues, right? So, but the interesting part is that number, it does change over time. So that is the reason why most guys, as an example, that have hair thinning issues, they complain of this, they go to see their doctor, and their doctor puts them on a medication like finasteride, as an example. Finasteride is a DHT blocker. It's a 5-alpha reductase enzyme inhibitor. It prevents testosterone from converting into dihydrotestosterone, and that is what brings their dihydrotestosterone levels down, and then their hair gets better, and their hair, strengthens and begins to grow well again. So characteristically, that happens to older guys and guys that generally have androgenic hair loss or hormone related hair loss like this. How old are they? Well, they're in their mid 40s, their 50s, or 60s. That's when that happens. So, wait a minute. Isn't that the same time frame that most guys are experiencing low testosterone issues? So, how can that be when most guys are in their 20s when their testosterone and therefore their DHT levels are at their highest? How come, all the guys in their 20s aren't losing their hair? Doesn't really make sense. So the reason why is because there's another variable that's in there, and it has to do with the change of the height of this glass ceiling. So when you're in your 20s, you have a very, very, very high tolerance for DHT in the hair follicles in particular. But as we age, there's a genetic clock, an alarm clock, so to speak, that happens. So that's why a lot of guys will tell you, the day I turned 42, I started losing my hair, or they'll have a date to it. They'll have a pretty specific time frame, for a lot of them, because there's a genetic switch that goes off. And that is what causes a decrease in the glass ceiling or the tolerance of DHT at those hair follicles. And that sensitivity of the DHT level, the DHT causes a weakness in the hair follicles, and the hair follicles have a hard time continuing with their growth of hair, and they kind of let go of the hair, and that's how it happens. So it's important to understand this, because it's possible we could be killing off your DHT, which is a good thing. It is a very important factor to have, but we don't want to kill it off unnecessarily if that's not the actual cause in the first place. So it's an important factor to throw into play. So and if anyone were to look up the side effects of taking a medication like finasteride, they're going to see a lot of different things. They're going to see fatigue, low libido, erectile dysfunction, generalized weakness, loss of motivation, which happen to sound very much like the low testosterone symptoms, right? So, and the reason why is because DHT is your active form of testosterone, and we want to maintain that if at all possible, as long as it's not causing a problem. But again, none of this is at the expense of your hair. I'm not saying that, but it is important to take a little time to investigate why, you're having the hair thinning in the first place. So DHT is possible. That is one of them. It is a common one, but it's not the only possibility. And there could be 3 or 4 different possibilities that are all happening all at once, So we have to kind of look at this in a logical and scientific manner if we're going to be as precise as possible as far as fixing it. So with that being a concern, there are ways to specifically attack that problem of DHT. Well, one of the things we can't do, unfortunately, it's impossible to change the height of that glass ceiling. We can't alter your tolerance for that. As we age, it's just something that just happens. So, and it doesn't happen to everyone. Some people genetically, this, like, they live long into their 70s and 80s and still have a full head of hair, and that's great, but this is something to keep in mind. So the way we attack that directly would be with, like I said, a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. That's the enzyme that converts regular testosterone, your free testosterone specifically, into dihydrotestosterone. There's actually 3 different variants of this enzyme. Finasteride blocks both, or 2 out of the 3 variants of this enzyme. Dutasteride is another one that's very similar to finasteride, and dutasteride is stronger. It does affect or block all 3 variants of the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. So that's going to have the most profound effect. If you Google online, you're going to see that a lot of people will say, and again, this goes back to just saying stuff. A lot of people will say dutasteride is the strongest one. That's the one that's most effective at hair loss, at preventing the hair thinning. So that's great, but again, we can't just say stuff. We have to look at the whole picture. So if dutasteride is supposedly better and you get on that and you absolutely crash, your DHT levels way lower than what they really need to be, then you're going to feel some side effects, right? But that's not what they're saying. They're saying that it's better for your hair, so is it worth it if you're really destroying your DHT, your hair comes back, but you feel like garbage? I don't think so. I think there's got to be somewhere in between. So that's why we have different options, finasteride being another one. So my point is going after the strongest DHT blocker is not always your best bet. Okay, so finasteride is an option. It's a little bit weaker than dutasteride, but that doesn't mean that it's worse. The next option, which is usually my initial go-to, is something called saw palmetto. It's an herbal supplement that you can take. It's very inexpensive. You can find it anywhere. Saw palmetto is there's conflicting data and research on this, but I've seen it in clinical practice. It does decrease your DHT. There's conflicting studies. Some studies say that they don't see any scientific evidence of DHT coming down. Some say they do. I've seen it a lot, over the years in clinical practice. I use saw palmetto a lot, for my patients. So it's very, very safe. And again, it's all about managing that DHT level. So that can be something that's very helpful in using a lighter hand or a more gentle hand, which is what you want to do in correcting this. You want to bring your level of DHT just below that glass ceiling point, so you can get all the benefit of the DHT without any of the side effects. That's the trick. So that's what I would recommend. There's some other more obscure herbals that are out there, but saw palmetto you can find anywhere, and it's very safe. It works really well. And usually there's no purpose or reason for doubling up on any of those, the finasteride and the saw palmetto, for example. Like, it just, you don't really have to do that. So that's what I would tell you. Another thing that's also important to keep in mind when it comes to these kinds of medications, finasteride is most commonly prescribed. A lot of guys might know this or have heard about this. It's most commonly prescribed for guys with prostate issues, because it also affects your DHT can also affect some issues with your prostate. We've found in more recent research that it's really the imbalance of other hormones. It's not just a glass ceiling, like a level of DHT that affects that's not the case. It's a combined balance of a lot of different hormones that make up prostate issues. But still, in most urology clinics and medical offices, finasteride and dutasteride are prescribed. The finasteride I've seen, and this is just in my experience, I've seen it most commonly prescribed at 5 milligrams per day as a pill. In my opinion, for my HRT patients that are just dealing with hair thinning, that would be way, 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 way too much. It's always best to check with your doctor, check with your clinician about what's going on and the correct dosage for you. But 9 times out of 10, I'm going to decrease someone from the 5 milligrams down to 1 milligram. Just 1 milligram per day does a great job, in my opinion. But again, make sure you check with your clinician and go from there, because stronger isn't always better. In a situation like this, it's all about balance. So that's that side of things. That's the DHT cause of hair thinning. So let's jump into some other causes of hair thinning. Well, other causes would be stress is actually a very, very high, it gives you a very high risk of some hair thinning issues, stress by itself. Stress causes a whole list or litany of hormone imbalances and issues. And if we think about it just from its root source, the purpose of stress is, and adrenaline, epinephrine, and those things all built into your body, you have a stress response, and it's very much like a fight or flight response. So if you really think about it, if your body is in a constant state of fight or flight, mentally, I'm running away from a saber-toothed tiger, and in our world, that might mean, I have business projects that are due. I have clients that are upset. I have bills that need to be paid, whatever the case may be. The dog just died, then that state of fight or flight puts your body in a certain mode of operating. Okay, so doing the extraneous stuff, like let's build pretty hair, like that's just not going to be on the list of priorities in a state of fight or flight. So very, very important to just think about that because that's how your body operates. It bases a lot of the things that we want to see, it puts it in priority and gets done the things that it wants to get done. So that's a very interesting and important aspect of treating hair thinning and hair loss, in particular. But stress is one of them, limiting stress as much as we can, doing the things that the therapeutic type of things that I talk about this a lot in this channel and also in the Living 360 podcast. We talk about stress and life and the impact that it has on our health and our anti-aging. So that's an important factor. With that being said, I want to talk about one of my favorite medications for hair loss, and that is minoxidil. Okay, minoxidil is a different type of medication altogether. So the way minoxidil works is that it does two things, actually. It was originally designed as a blood pressure medication, so it does actually lower your blood pressure. It's designed to relax the smooth muscles in your arteries. So there's a good benefit of that. It decreases your blood pressure. It's just a good overall good thing to do. But when it relaxes the muscles in the arteries, what it does, they dilate, okay, and they fill up. So essentially, it's like if we have a garden outside and we're putting in irrigation and we allow for larger pipes of irrigation to flow through there, we're going to get more water going to our garden, right? And that's basically the point. As far as your hair is concerned, it really can help just bringing in more irrigation. Another thing it does at the same time is that it extends or it lengthens and makes the anagen phase of hair development longer. There's several phases to the life cycle of a hair, and the anagen phase is the beginning stages of growth and production and activity and all kinds of things. So it goes in and reactivates and reestablishes that phase, for all of your hair follicles, which is a great, great thing. That's another part where the hair growth comes in. So notice those are the two things that that minoxidil does. Okay, so notice that neither one of those has anything to do with hormones, which is great, which is great. So a lot of times I like to go after that one. It's generally very, very safe. We don't really have any major side effects. There's some that are listed, but they're incredibly rare. And I don't see that I don't see very much of that in actual clinical practice, but but it's generally a very safe medication to use. You take it as a pill on a day-to-day basis. They also have it in serum, shampoos, and different hair tonics and stuff that you can do, which is helpful. But the pill also works very well, that you can just take every single day, and it doesn't have anything to do with your hormones. So if we can fix the issue without mucking around with your hormones or taking anything out of balance, that's a very good thing. So that one is one that can be combined with some of the other forms. Let's say you have a DHT problem and you want to take saw palmetto to lower your DHT, but you also really want to activate the anagen phase of your hair growth. Then taking minoxidil and saw palmetto would be a great thing to do. So when it comes to your hair, I call this a fire alarm issue when patients call in and say, hey, I'm having a hair issue. It's like, okay, pull the fire alarm. If it was my hair and I was having an issue, it's like, okay, let's everybody hold, stop everything, call the president, do whatever we got to do to get my hair back again, right? So I like to kind of I like to throw a logical kitchen sink at this issue. I'll put it that way. So so we talked about DHT. If DHT is an issue, we talked about just general, a hair development and hair growth is a great thing to do. Okay, so that was stress we talked about as a cause. Another cause is just genetics. Sometimes it just happens. There's a certain time in your life that we don't really, it's really hard to pinpoint the cause. And it's just one of those things that just happens. Now, is there anything we can do about that? Of course, there's always something you can do. So in a situation like that, minoxidil for sure. In every situation, I like to support your multivitamins. So all of these things are really important for hair development. For women that are experiencing hair development, hands down, I always recommend that they take a good prenatal vitamin. Okay. And a lot of times women, their first statement back is like, well, I'm not trying to get pregnant. I'm past that stage or whatever. That's great. But those multivitamins are so chock full of great stuff and great vitamins and elements in there that if it's good enough and healthy and clean enough and strong enough to help you build a baby, then it's strong enough to help you build your hair, for sure. And they have all of the same type of nutrients in there, biotin, B12, folate, there's tons of stuff in there that's just great for hair development. So that's, a lot of women will tell you that as soon as I got on my prenatal, my hair just had more body. It was thicker. It just looked healthier, so, that's a little trick that's inexpensive that you can pick up anywhere. Guys, it's important to just get on a really good multivitamin you know, just a good solid multivitamin is a good thing to do. There's others out there that are they say they're specifically designed for hair, and some of them can be rather expensive. But if you can find one that is not too expensive and worthwhile, it's great. I look at those types of compounds and I look at the ingredients and I say, okay, well this one is $100, but I can take three different pills and make up the same amount as that, and for $20 each, So like, think about that. Nutrafol is one of them that does really well. I recommend that a lot, but it is rather expensive for what you get. It's something to think about. So, so that's the kitchen sink aspect of all different things you can throw at it. One more part of the kitchen sink that I really like is red light therapy. I'm a big fan of red light therapy for a lot of different issues in the body. It does stimulate growth, recovery, regeneration, and it's something that's very safe and very healthy that you can do. They have these red light therapy hats that you can. Let me have one. Yep, here we go. This is a red light therapy hat that you put on, and it has all of these different lights inside, and they shine a red light at a certain wavelength, and that wavelength stimulates growth. This one you actually plug in, and it works. It works pretty well, and it's something that you can do for 15 minutes a day. That you don't have to worry about having any side effects or any problems with. So again, throwing the kitchen sink out. It doesn't matter what the cause is. The red light therapy is only going to help. It's not going to hurt you. Making sure your vitamins are on point. It's only going to help you. It's not going to hurt you. The minoxidil, same thing. It's only going to help. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to put anything out of balance. So those are three things right there that you can do right off the bat. As we're trying to figure out, what the actual issue is. Other reasons for hair thinning and hair loss. Well, estrogen, believe it or not, estrogen is a cause of hair thinning and hair loss. Too much estrogen. A prime example of that is severe polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. Severe PCOS can cause hair thinning, for many reasons. It's not always because of DHT or high testosterone levels. So yes, excess estrogen can do that. With women, it's their times of the month when their estrogen is too high is very cyclical and is usually short-lived. So that's why we don't see it as often in women. But there are some hormone conditions where you can have a consistently high level of estrogen all the time, Different variants of that are called estrogen dominance, and that certainly can lend itself towards hair thinning and hair loss, which is a problem. And you can take all the finasteride in the world, and it's not going to do anything for you, if that's your issue. So that's why it's important to make sure you take the time to work with someone that's going to help you really figure out the cause, of this. So those are some of the primary causes there. And the last one that I almost forgot, hypothyroidism. So thyroid, or having appropriate levels of thyroid hormone, in particular your T3, your free T3 hormone, and also your free T4 hormones. Those are very, very important in the development of, well, not only your metabolism, but also your hair. So it plays a big impact in that. So that's one of the signs of hypothyroidism that should be looked at, to make sure that that's not an issue. Again, if you have hypothyroidism and that is the cause of your hair loss, you can take all the finasteride in the world and it will not do a single thing for your hair. And you can go months and months or even years with that prescribed, crashing your DHT level for no reason, all because you didn't take the time to figure it out in the beginning. So those things are very, very crucial, very important. Always drive for those answers and those details. So that is all I've got really when it comes to hair thinning. For you guys today, there's a lot to dig into further that I go into with my consultations and getting labs and other things, but I think that gives you a pretty good handle. If you have any questions and you'd like to seek out more information, hit us up online on our website, www.team360health.com, and I'd be happy to work with you. So you can check out the website and the information below, and we're here for you for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode. Stay healthy.